A little bit about my story. So my name is Roy Griffin. I've been a yoga teacher, teacher trainer for the last 20 years or so. But I found yoga before yoga found me. So what do I mean by that? I'm very much a breech yogi. Like a breech baby, normal baby comes out head first, is I come out feet first. I come out in the reverse. A lot of people would start with the postures and then they'd go on to the other more subtle stuff. Where at the age of 4, I started with the philosophy. I started with some really important questions. And very simply, somebody died in my family, and as a 4-year-old, I couldn't comprehend how somebody could walk into a room and not come out. And I asked the question because I was told they went to heaven. So that logically made me think, well, if they were here, then they're gone somewhere else. If I'm here now, then where was I before I was here? So that meant I could take things out. So I started to ask, what was I? I didn't get very far. Way too young for who am I? My intellect wasn't developed enough. But one day, rather than asking what I was, I asked myself what I wasn't. And I happened to be walking on a wall. And I was looking at the wall as I asked the question. And I knew in my heart and soul that I'm not that wall. And what happened was my knower woke up, my third eye, the knower within me woke up. I knew what it was to know. And the difficulty with my family member passing, nobody could give me the assurity of knowing. What happened? Where is he gone? What's all this thing about death? Nobody gave me that assurity. So I needed to know. So I learned what it was to know. I think I was about 5 years of age. And then I deconstructed myself through my first life cycle, which was pretty intense. I just started to take out everything that I could. So if I was given the name Roy, I could take that off. If you have this body, but then it goes elsewhere or you lose it, well, I can take the body off. And I started to take everything out that I could. And anything that I could not take out that was constant. And one of the things I realized I couldn't take out was consciousness itself. It just wouldn't leave. No matter how many times I tried to take it out, this fecker wouldn't seem to leave. But lots of other things I could take out. And that was it. My first life cycle is I came into the solitude and aloneness of my own consciousness. And that's the learning of the first chakra, the root chakra. Who are you when you're continuously present? I came into that space. Now, I'm not saying I came into it with the maturity of intelligence. Not a chance. I was a 6 and 7-year-old, but I had the experience. And then I continued on. Very much. I started to practice. Oh God, how can I say this? I followed logic. I asked how my family member died. Brain stopped. Didn't really make much sense for me. The heart stopped. Didn't make much sense for me. He stopped breathing. Bingo. That made sense to me because I could relate to breath because I could feel that. So then I decided I'd start to practice what it was like to die. Now, I wasn't trying to die. I wasn't trying to leave. I just wanted to know what the experience was like. But to do that, I had to slow down my breathing because I had to try and stop my breath. So holding your breath doesn't get very far at all. So I was like, okay, let's slow it down. And I went through that for years. From the second life cycle, from 7 to 14, I spent hours at night in bed going through a deep pranayama practice. And I'd extend out my breath and extend out the pauses. And what happened was I started to go into yoga nidra, conscious sleep. My body would fall asleep, but my mind would stay awake. My energetic body would fall asleep, and I'd wake up in my dreams, and I'd start to lucid dream, and I'd start controlling my dreams. And there's a whole journey I went on there. And again, part of deconstructing. I remember at one point, I think it was about 7 or 8 years of age, is before I fell asleep at night, I'd ask myself, am I just about to fall asleep or am I just about to wake up? Because both realities seem so real. Then I would lucid dream, and I'd be in my lucid dreaming, and I'd ask the same question, have I just woken up or have I just fallen asleep? Because I was in this physical world during the day and this energetic world at night, and the freedom in one was considerably different than the other. So, and now I was in between two worlds. That's what I felt like. And as part of the process of, you know, well, if I'm here, where was I before I was here? Now, part of the process then is, well, if I'm here, there's somewhere else I'm going to go because my family member went elsewhere. So then I was trying to check out where that was, you know. So I ended up astral projecting, and it's a conversation for another day. But I went so far into it that I went right to the edge. I went right to the edges. I went as far as I could go, and a simple way to describe that is you can intuit and you can intuit and you can intuit what's ahead of you, what's in front of you. But at one point you meet a space where there is no more intuit, there is no more feedback. You get nothing from this space. And I went to that edge, and I decided, well, I'm going to check out what's over there, and it just terrified me. And I shot back into my body, and I didn't realize until years later, if you're not ready to die, it's going to be terrifying, and your fear will generate what it can to send you back. And the most terrifying thing is evil. So I felt this malevolent force, like it was going to devour me. And that's exactly what happens at death. The first stage of it is when the darkness comes, you feel like you're being devoured until the lightness comes. So as a kid anyway. But then I sat with that for a bunch of months, thinking about it. And then I realized if I go, there's no guarantee I'm going to find my family member. There's no guarantee I'm going to get anywhere. I could end up in a worse place. So if this is where I am, well then this is where I'm meant to be. So then I said, I better figure out here. So I decided then I'd stay here and I'd figure out this place. But I'd be ready for the next time I come to that door, so to speak. So my third life cycle as a teenager is I found the trance dancing. And a simple way to describe it is, I was 17, I was able to get out of the house and I found dance floor and I was loving it, you know. And I remember finding all these reasons to be happy, and then each one of them falling through my fingers. And I was so frustrated by it. And I remember one day saying to myself, why can't I be happy? I said, I keep finding all these reasons to be happy and then they go, but I'm a happy guy. I am happy. So why can't I just be happy? And then the penny dropped is if you want to master something, is you have to do it for its own sake, not for the benefit or the consequences. So the best reason to be happy is for happy sake. And then I bloomed in my happiness, because happiness itself is the reward. And then I went on to the dance floor and I started to practice all these different energies that I'd connected to over the years. I went into euphoria, joy, bliss, and I experienced them all for their own sake. And I tranced, and I tranced, and I tranced. And it was super, it was amazing. But again, like Icarus, you fly too high to the sun and you get burnt. I had a bit of a crash at 21 where is the experiences I was having weren't grounded in the everyday world. So my everyday world just fell apart. And I realized at 21, it's the third time I've gone through this cycle. And I was like, again? Now I realize the pattern of it. And I said, this is the third time this has happened. I'm going to be ready for the fourth time. Now, when I was 11 years of age, I watched this program on hypnosis. It was like for half an hour. And it basically said, actions speak louder than words. And I felt relieved. I said, oh, thank God. That's why I'm different. That's the way I am. Is I don't take what people say to me, I take what people mean to me. So what a person really means, I focus on rather than what they're actually saying. So a person says one thing but means another. And while that's a great skill to have, is at a social level, is it makes it very difficult. Because if you go around dealing with what people really mean rather than what they're presenting to you, is it always seems a confrontation, a miscommunication, misinterpretation. It was just difficult. But I felt relieved that's what that was. And I promised myself at 11 years of age, I'm going to learn that when I'm ready. So at 19 I went and I checked for courses, and I knew I wasn't ready to start. So 21, I was crashing, ended the third life cycle. I was going through the death of the cycle, and I was crashing in glory, and I knew it was the right time to do it. So I went and I did a course in counselling and hypnotherapy at 21, and that was the first time, rather than just deconstructing all the time, that was the first time I started to construct. I started to put together. And I started physical yoga practice very soon after that as well. And I basically went from the dance floor and all my trance experiences. I put everything, first 3 years of my yoga practice, all I did was sun salutations and relaxation. And I danced. I'd do sessions for like 2 or 3 hours. So I put everything that was going on in my body through the sun salutes. Everything I was feeling got put through the sun salutes. Everything that I was thinking got put through the sun salutes, and then I'd relax. And what I created was like a grand central. Everything gets put through this one space. And then with the sun salutes, there's the grounding, then there's the limbering, you open out, and then you bring in the strengthening, so it brings in the energy and the concentration, brings in the strength, then there's the calming down, the letting go, and then you come back to the peace and the lying down, and then the stillness. So that process showed me how to bring energy up and bring it down. And then to center that experience through my body, through energetically, and then mentally. It was super. And then I was also learning all these skills of counseling and hypnotherapy. So, do my yoga practice. I pretty much lived in my bedroom for a lot of my 20s, do my practice. At 28, I decided to teach yoga. So I became a yoga teacher. And it just kicked off. It was just because I was so much in my practice, it just worked, and it worked great. By the time I was 32, I started my first teacher training course. So how did that happen? The year before, I opened up my own yoga studio, and I ran my first self-practice course for a year. I took 12 people on the course for a year, and I took them through their self-practice. Out of the 12, 6 of them went off and did teacher training. And one of them came back from London, and he said, you know, what you taught me was as good as what they taught me. He said, all you need to do is formulate your course into a teacher training course, and you could do teacher training. You're as good as what I got on the teacher training course. So I took that as a sign. So I decided to sit down and structure out my notes and put them together as a teacher training course. And then I started teacher training at 32. And then I've been teaching teacher training courses now for the last, I'm 48 now, 16, 17 years. And over that time, I have developed my own system. So what do I mean by that? Is you have different styles of yoga, and then you have the system of yoga itself. Traditionally, the system of yoga itself is known as Hatha yoga. And then out of that, people pick different elements to it. So vinyasa is like a flow style. So people practice flowing. Ashtanga is very much the ujjayi and the locks. Iyengar is very much about alignment. So different styles pick out different aspects of the system of yoga. If somebody was going to practice the system of yoga, they'd actually have to practice all the different styles to really understand the system. The same with yin yoga is much more grounded and calm. It's very relaxing. So all these different styles, if you're going to put all the different styles together, where do you start? So a beginner would start from the outside in. So alignment and the anatomy of movement becomes very important. Is you want to establish that in the person. So that's very much like Iyengar. That's alignment. That's a stability class, I would call it. As a person moves in, is they want to begin to activate their core. They want to begin to engage their breath and activate the locks in their body. Because after alignment that's where you naturally would move into. And again, it's very much the Ashtanga focus. But it really is about the breath and the locks and the core, but it's within alignment, within the anatomy of movement. So your body's moving right, now your internal body begins to move right. You're shifting from physical control to energetic control. That's the natural steps. So as you're refining your center, is you want to then bring in the flow state. So you're moving from the inside out. A beginner starts from the outside in, an advanced practitioner works from the inside out. So now you're in the flow state. But you're in the flow state with awareness, is you're moving from your energetic core and then you're moving through your physical core. So you've got your alignment, the stability class, the core class, the flow class. You want to do it all mindfully. So you got to learn how to teach a mindfulness class too. You want to become a well-rounded yoga teacher, mindfulness is really important. As the person comes across blocks in their body, is then you need to work out the more subtle practice of restorative, how to release those blocks. So these are all the key elements to learning the system of yoga as opposed to picking out a style. So I've designed this and I've been teaching this for the last number of years. Now that refines further into the more subtle practice of the chakras. So there's a whole chakra element to the practice, and there's a whole kundalini element to the practice as well. I could be talking all day long. Essentially the system, as it stands now, there's 16 different type of classes that a teacher learns to teach the system of yoga rather than a style. Now you might say, that's a lot. That's a ridiculous amount. How could anybody do that? Well, they all naturally fit one into the other, so they're not separated or isolated. It's the one system. So how do you accelerate the whole thing? When you physically center, you energetically center, you mentally center, it's the same practice done at a subtle level. So the acceleration of it all is that when you understand centering and you layer it in, it's the layering in that accelerates the whole thing. Now center in each chakra. Now center in the higher consciousness within each one. It's the same centering. It accelerates the whole thing. You have the root and the rise. You root down, you lift up, and that creates that inner space. So you're holding your inner space. That's called yielding. So you physically yield, you energetically yield, you mentally yield. Okay, now you yield in the flow. Now you activate a chakra and you begin to yield in the chakra. It's the same practice. You're just layering it into the more subtle elements as you go. That's when you understand the system of yoga as a whole, you can actually bring it all together. So the skills that you learn gets layered into all the other aspects. It's all connected. So while 16 classes sounds like a lot, well, if you're going to be a practitioner, you've got your whole life. If you're going to be a yoga practitioner, you commit to it to life, well, you want to have a lifelong journey. There's no point in doing the same practice over and over and over for 50 years. You want to have a journey. You want to go on the big inward journey. And a simple way to describe it is everybody needs to find their mountain. In this life, you want to find your purpose. You want to have meaning in your life. Go find your mountain. Everybody needs to find a mountain to climb. So the person you are at the start, when you start climbing the mountain, every step you take is by the time you reach the peak of the mountain, who are you? Does that make sense? It shows you the purpose and meaning of your life. And it reveals you. It reveals your authentic you. It reveals the fullness of you. So you want to live the fullness of that experience. So you need to have a big journey. If you're going to be a yoga teacher, it's the same. Is you want to have that experience of continual progression. The story is always unfolding, so that you're teaching for 10 years, 2 years, and you still have beginner's mind, but yet you've established yourself. Teaching in 5 years, you still have beginner's mind, but yet you're a mature yoga teacher. 10 years, 15, 20 years, you still are in beginner's mind learning new things, but yet you fundamentally have changed your experience and the experience of many other people through the journey that you've gone on, and it continues on. So that's the system. That's my life's purpose. That's what I do. So I've decided that I'm going to put everything online. I'm going to break it all down into steps and put it out for everybody to engage with. So people can begin to understand the system of yoga and to practically and systematically go through the system, and that it becomes tangible and that it makes sense to you. So you're learning the what of the experience, and then you want to get into the how.